The next question is from Rebecca. She says, "There's so much I want to do with my business, but I promised myself I wouldn't create any new product lines right now because I'm already stretched too thin. Shane mentioned I should create some type of upsell for parents who are taking our class, but that means more work. When do you decide whether or not to pursue a new idea or just stay focused on what you're doing right now?" Oh, Rebecca, I feel
Yeah,
your
it's hard
pain because I have like a million ideas that I want to do right now, but I'm also super unmotivated to work on them
the new
for
things.
whatever reason. I don't know why. Like I want to do it, but then I'm like, oh, the work. So I do feel your pain on this one.
But there is a to construct this, like, an analogy I use a lot is the football field. Like, right, like, a football field is 100 yards wide. I'm sorry, 100 yards long. You've got 10
Ex football coach, what?
ex football coach. You got 10 yards in the end zone, so you got 120 total yards from end to end, and then it's 53 and 1/3 yards wide. Right, like that's the rules of the game. That's how the game of football has structured it. But like when you have your own business, you get to reshape the rules, right? Like you get to, I could change the football field. I could make it 60 yards wide and 40 yards long or whatever. And we could play on that kind of field, right? Because it's my field and it's your field. So a lot of times when Jocelyn and I get stuck like that and we're like, man, we really need an upsell. We really need one more place for people to go, but we don't have time to create it. We say, well, let's figure out what we can create in a way we want to create it, and we'll do that instead. That's actually why we started doing the one-on-one interviews on our podcast, because we said, hey, look, we want to have great content, we want to serve people, we want to help people, but we don't want to sit down for 3 hours and work and research
And
and
write a
outline a
script.
script. We just don't want to do it. So how can we still put out a 30 to 45-minute podcast every week without having to prep for it for more than 15-20 minutes? So we came up with our intake form, which is it's like character limited. It's written in a way where we can read it, really quick before the show. We know a lot about the guests when they come on, usually from the forums, and then bam, we jump right into it, and we have a template that we follow to do the podcast. So we created what we could create, right? You may have to do the upsell later if you're too thin right now. You may have to get someone else to create the upsell, which means it might not be a big research thing that you do. It might look like something else. Okay. But you're going to have to figure out what you can create. Don't talk about what you can't create. If you can't create something, then don't have the conversation. Put your head down, plow forward, keep doing what you're doing. Or if you can come up with something you can create, do it. It was like Jocelyn and I wanted to go, just me and her, to the Caribbean recently, but we didn't really have time to get it all together, so we went to Florida instead, right? Like you got to do what you can do within the football field or the game that you've created. But there's usually something you're not thinking about, and I would maybe get your team involved. I know you've got a team. Ask them what they think. Maybe it's not the upsell that I suggested. Maybe it's something else. The concept is give them somewhere else to go. So give them somewhere else to go. Just find a way to do it, even if somebody else creates it or whatever. Okay.
And it can be a long-term strategy too. Like that's sort of how I'm thinking about the ideas that I have right now. There are several things that I really want to do, and I think that it could really help us grow our business in some different ways. But the problem is that I need a big infrastructure behind it. And so, I've kind of put it on my back burner until 2020. So it's sort of like my 2020 project. So you can also think of it in that way too.
And like if you take like something like an opt-in, or I'm sorry, an upsell can take a day to create. You can repurpose things. You can do something else. Like maybe you can just pick one day and that's all you do the whole day with somebody else on your team, and you just get it done. And just whatever you create in that 8-hour block is what the upsell is, period, or whatever. But like even if you think about it in the long term, like if it takes 10 hours to create something, like work on it 15 minutes a day for fun until you get it done. It doesn't have to. Don't feel like pressure from your own arbitrary deadline that this thing's coming up and you have to have an upsell this time. Maybe you can have it 3 months from now when you do your next enrollment. Maybe you can do it a year from now. It's just that's kind of where you want to end up. That's the destination. You get to set the timetable when you get there. It's your rules. It's your game.